Hi everyone, this is your host, Denise Scattergood. Welcome to this very special bonus episode of Positive Forward Motion. Today I am sitting with Anthony Graves and his message of hope, faith, forgiveness, and positivity at a time in his life that is filled with trials and tribulation is sure to make a positive impact in your life. Anthony, thank you so much for allowing me to come and meet with you here at TSU here in Houston. Hanging out in your office. It's an honor and a blessing to meet with you.
Wow.
And before we even get started, I always love just for you to say hello to the listeners and tell them a little bit about Anthony Graves.
Well, first of all, Denise, I'd like to say thank you for inviting me to be a part of your podcast. I think what you're doing is amazing. And to your fans, hello, my name is Anthony Graves, and I'm sitting here with Denise, and I'm excited about this interview that we're about to do.
And I have to give a little disclosure because this interview almost didn't happen because when we sat down, we talked football and we realized that I'm a Philadelphia Eagle fan.
Yeah,
and
I'm
you
a
are
Cowboy fan. I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan.
Okay.
So, you know.
Well, we found some common ground in positive forward motion. So,
yeah.
So perfect. So, Anthony, I just finished your book, Infinite Hope. To share with the listeners, I think I learned about your story maybe 6 or 8 years ago, and I always thought in the back of my mind, like, wow, how what you went through and how you continued in faith and hope and positive forward motion. I mean, there's not another way to share that. But, you know, for the listeners who don't know who you are and what you went through, maybe give them just a little insight there of...
Yeah, for the listeners that don't know who I am, shame on you. No, I'm just kidding. But my name is Anthony Graves, and I'm Texas Death Row exoneree number 13. Well, number 12. But overall, I am the nation's Death Row exoneree number 138. I was wrongfully convicted and sentenced to death for a crime I knew absolutely nothing about. I spent 18 and a half years in prison, 12 and a half of those on death row, where a total of 16 was in solitary confinement. That's just because you're housed that way when you have a death sentence, particularly here in Texas. I witnessed over 400 executions. I had 2 execution dates myself. And after over 18 and a half years, I was exonerated. And ever since then, I've been traveling the world, sharing my story in hope of making change in our criminal justice system.
Wow, I can never say I can imagine, because I can't imagine. But when I first heard your story, what amazed me was that 18 years, 16 of those years, solitary confinement. You have every right to come out the other side being angry and bitter and upset. And when I heard your story of hope and inspiration and how you've decided to help others and use your story for good. But again, for anybody out there listening, I 2 days, a week in solitary confinement and would break us. And you kept moving forward and had such a belief. So one of the things that when you and I were speaking earlier, you talked about choices and how you made the choices for your mind. And this is what kept that faith and kept you going. So maybe elaborate a little bit on the topic of choices.
Well, okay, first of all, I want to follow up from what you said earlier about I had every right to come out and be angry. I didn't have every right to come out and be angry because it didn't happen to me for me to come out and be angry. It happened to me for me to come out and educate the people on why we need to change. So, no, I didn't have every right to be angry. That would have been going the wrong way, so to speak. But, yeah, choices. I remember the first time I got an execution date. The officers came to pick me up and take me down to the captain's office. The state had called them and said that they was going to execute me on a certain day. And so they had to take me down there so that the captain could tell me and ask me what I wanted them to do with my body after they execute me and what I wanted my last meal to be. And I never forget how that changed my life totally. That just hearing them tell me that they was going to kill me for something that I didn't know anything about. The thought that came in my mind changed my whole life. And that thought was, I'm just going to live till I die. Because I knew that's something they couldn't take from me. No matter what they did to me physically, They couldn't take the fact that I had a right and a choice as to how I wanted to respond to what I was going through. And my response was, I'm just going to live till I die, because that's something they can't take from me. And if they can't take it from me, I wasn't going to give it to them. And that began my life from existing on death row to now living on death row, because that thought reminded me that no matter what circumstances I face in life, I have a choice as to how I want to respond to it. Always remember that, because when you know that, then you start thinking about the best way to respond to a situation that you think is chaotic in your life. And the best way is to be positive. Is to be positive, because you're going to get something out of it that's going to teach you a valuable lesson that's going to be your blessing one day. So positive thinking was the only way for me, because other than that, they would have killed me, or I would have killed myself before I even laid down. So I chose to do positive thinking and move forward positively. And today, I have a platform where I'm around the country educating people about our need for criminal justice reform. So it's been a blessing for me.
Wow. Where would you say that you got that positive mindset? Was it something that was instilled in you as a young boy? Something you learned from, family? Where would you say you got
Well,
that?
I would first and foremost say it comes from believing in God, knowing that God is all things positive. And in those trenches where people are trying to murder you for something you know absolutely nothing about, you have to find that one thing that you say you believe in, and you have to grab it and you have to hold it and you can't let it go. I believed in God before this happened to me. And when I seen what man was trying to do to me, I grabbed on to God and I held on to him and I wouldn't let go. And he brought me through it. So, my positive thinking came from my belief in God. That's first and foremost. And then it also came from my naivete in knowing that I'm innocent and not thinking that you could just execute me for something I don't even know anything about. So naivete and God saved my life.
Wow,
Yeah.
I love that. You mentioned in the book, I remember that, you started to read and you're reading Westerns and you're reading the Bible.
Yes.
And at one moment, and you were human, you were so upset and you threw the Bible across
Yes.
the room, the cell.
Yes.
And when you picked it up,
Yes, when I picked it up, I to paraphrase the message that I went to, it said that God wasn't going to put no more on me than I could bear. And when I read that, it just something just came over me like a sense of calm. Okay, now I need to figure out why are they doing this to me? And I need to figure out what do I get out of this so that I can share with the rest of the world, so that this just don't be for nothing. So understanding that God wasn't going to put no more on me than I could bear allowed me to start thinking outside the box. Allow me to start feeling a sense of calm now, knowing that God was in control. Therefore, I don't have to worry about it no more. I can just try to figure out how to make this the best situation for me right now. That belief in God gave me that comfort that I can get through this. And opening up his Bible and reading his words and letting me know that he was here for me and he wasn't going to put me in no situation that I couldn't deal with. It was very empowering to me, and I never let that go.
well, and for the listeners, when they read your book, Infinite Hope, or you can find it on Audible as well, to the prison that you were in. And a lot of us in life walk around in our own mental prison
Right.
of negative thoughts and woe is me
Yes.
and the whole bit. So here you are in solitary confinement, actually behind real bars. People around you are being put to death. So, just so the audience can even understand that magnitude from the time that you were in to the time that you were released.
From the time I went in to the time I was released, over 413 men and women were executed around me here in the state of Texas. I'm not talking nationwide. I'm just saying people that I knew, people that I watched grow from behind those bars that came there when they was 17 and now was getting executed at 31, 32. These are people who the numbers were removed and the faces were replaced in my life. So when people hear about death row inmate They think of them as numbers and statistics, but these were real people to me. People that I seen laugh and smile and cry. People whose families would come down there and visit them and would leave without them, and you see the pain and you see all the chaos and the ripple effect that this is causing, and you say, how can I help? Mm-hmm. How can I help this situation? Because no longer is it about me now. This is about a system that is off the tracks, and it's causing a ripple effect in families' lives in a negative way. How can we make this better? And that was my mind, is how can I make this better? And I always thought, when I go home, I never said if, because I believe in my God, and I know he wasn't going to put no more on me than I could bear. He had already promised me that. So I knew that when I went home, I needed to be prepared to tell the rest of the world this story. And so I paid attention to my life and what was going on around me. And I knew then that I was there for a reason. This wasn't going to be the end of my life. I'm here for a reason. And that's why today I'm very confident in traveling and sharing my story, because I know that I was there for a reason, and this was the reason. I needed to let people know that what we're endorsing in our criminal justice system is now become criminal. And we need to pay attention. So that's my message around the world. And at the end of the day, my message to any and everyone, that no matter what you're going through in life, remember, you have a choice as to how you want to respond to it. Ask me. I was sitting on death row. I lost 6,640 days of my life for something I knew absolutely nothing about. And I watched young men cave under that pressure. I watched men take their lives, slitting their throats, hanging themselves, overdosing on their medication. I watched all of this, but I already knew that God had me, and I knew this wasn't going to be me. It wasn't going to be me. I just needed to see this so that I can go back and let everybody know what we're doing back here. All right? God had me that whole time.
Absolutely. And to recap, when you said pay attention, when you were in it, it's dark and it's scary and it's awful. And I find myself being the most positive person, and I find the good in people and situations and things. And as I listen to your story and read your book, I don't know that I would have that wherewithal. So that reminder of paying attention right where you are. You weren't looking back, and you weren't looking so far forward. You had that belief system, but you paid attention right where you were, and use that moment to collect that information and write those stories, because you believed when you got out someday. That paying attention, now you're not looking back on, I wished I paid attention because I could do something with it. You knew, and you paid attention to that. You mentioned something to me earlier, that when they gave you your death sentence date, you mentioned that the threat of death kind of got watered down.
Yeah.
Share that a little bit.
Yeah, the reason why I say the threat of death sort of got watered down is because, number one, I had witnessed so many executions around me. People that I had become to know and care about as human beings and individuals. And I was watching them at young ages being carried off by the state and just being executed, one after another. Sometimes they was doing it twice a day. And then everybody was down there with this threat of an execution hanging over their head. And I stayed down there so long and seen so much death, as they call it, that it became watered down to me. I became immune to it because I had to go into survival mode. Because all the people that was around me, I had grew to care about, but they were being executed like animals. And so I grew immune to this whole notion of death. And I started understanding better that it's not death. It got to be life, because in order for us to get to heaven, we have to die first. So this whole threat of killing me to send me to heaven, why am I going to be afraid of that if I say I believe in God? So once I understood the bigger picture, I realized, so all this time y'all been threatening us with heaven. You can't threaten me with heaven and I get afraid.
I love it.
You
can no longer threaten
me with heaven. And that was empowering, to know that all you're doing is sitting here threatening me with heaven. Why am I afraid of that? And once I understood that, oh, I became a mighty force to reckon with. Because I knew at the end of the day, whether I'm in here or whether I'm out here, I'm still preparing myself to go to heaven, right? Through my good works. So why in hearing you telling me that you finna send me to heaven, oh, okay, well, just make sure I have my best suit on because I want to meet God in my best suit, okay? Because you can no longer threaten me with heaven. Right. I'm prepared for that. Right.
Yes. Even as you're sharing, and again, it's such an honor. Oftentimes when we're doing a podcast or an interview, it's through a computer and away, and I'm so honored to be able to sit here with you right now. And as you're sharing that, I'm just watching you. I can just see the brightness around you. That became your shield.
Yes.
It became your warrior. You were like, you can't threaten me with heaven, and I'm going to put that one in my back pocket.
Well, it's a good one to have because I remember when the last days that I was incarcerated, the day that they was going to tell me that I was being released, I didn't know. The officer came and got me out of my cell to take me to talk to my attorneys. I didn't know they were up there, but when I got there, I remember my attorney standing up and she was trying to bat back tears, right? And in my mind, I'm saying, this is just some more bad news, but I don't care. I got my shield and my sword. They're going to kill me or they're going to free me. I'm not compromising the truth. God got me. And that's it. God got me. So we're going to keep this thing in God's hand. And when I got there, my attorney said, you remember, Anthony, when you told me that God was good? And I said, yeah, but I didn't know where she was going, you know. And she said, well, I just want you to know that God is good, Anthony, because today the state has dismissed all charges against you. And not because they're saying that witnesses have died or evidence has gotten old. They're dismissing the charges against you because they believe in your innocence. And they're going to tell the whole world tomorrow that you're innocent. So I share that to say this, that no matter how bad you think it is, remember that is your thought process. That's not the situation. It is your perception in your life that makes things bad or good. It's all about you and how you're perceiving your life to be in that moment. And understanding that means that you have a choice as to how you want to respond to what you think is going on in your life. And I would say to you, respond positively, because if you do, you're going to get something out of it. It's going to be called a lesson that's going to eventually turn into your blessing that you're going to be able to share with someone that you love one day. That's what I do today.
That's positive forward motion all the way. Yes, sir. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's such a great lesson on choices and our mindset. And I knew your story because I've seen it on 48 Hours and I've heard about it and I can read about it even on Wikipedia and as I'm diving in, and then I get into your book, and even though I know the end result or the middle, as I'm listening to your book, I'm getting so wrapped up in every time you turned around where you believed in the system and had trust in the system, trust in humanity, trust in other people, trust that everyone was doing the right thing when they actually weren't. And each time you moved forward and uncovered that, again, this was a lie, and again, I couldn't trust this person. I went through so many emotions reading the book, from just so mad and angry that I wanted to shake some of these folks. So with all of those years of that and having that exposed to you and just right in your face, you're so caring and trusting and honorable. I know it's going to tie in a little bit to the same questions I've had, but I'm just overwhelmed and so moved how that didn't ruin you.
Yeah, because I knew through paying attention, I started to understand that this was man. And as man, we fall short. This was man doing, not God. So I needed to gravitate more toward God and not rely on man. So my trust was in God, not man, because I already seen what man would do to me. But I knew that God already told me that he had me. So all I wanted to do was move toward God. I needed to trust him just a little bit more. And as hard and difficult as I thought things were getting, I gravitated toward God just a little bit more. And that's where I always found my comfort, because I knew if I continue to try to trust in man, man has shown me time and time again that he will let me down. So this is not working. I need to trust in the right source, and that is my God. And once I figured that out, I began to live. And I never looked back after that. I knew everything was okay because I finally found my landing spot, which was in God's hands. That's where all my trust was in God. And that got me through.
What a great message, because so many times in our lives we can be wronged.
Yes.
And we hang on to that anger and regret and just revenge feeling that. And in your book, it unfolds so many times where you take a step back, especially when you were in the same cell area as Robert Carter.
Yes.
And you faced him and had that moment. And for everyone out there, when you read the book, you'll understand. But Robert Carter is the one who
lied on me.
Who lied on you.
Yes.
And he has proclaimed at times that you were innocent, but
Yes.
the system was so corrupt no one was listening. But the fact that he lied on you is what started this whole thing. And here you are, how many years later in prison?
It has to be about at least 10 years later.
10 years later, and you are face to face with him
Yes.
in a rec area,
Yes.
so to speak. I remember reading this part in the book, but I'll let you share a little bit about how that meeting went. Because with most people, what do we want to do? We're 10 years in prison because, yo, buddy, you lied, and here I am now. You're face to face, and you had choices right then and there.
Yes,
and,
I
and,
did.
And many,
Yes, I did.
Many people would do an eye for an eye. So,
Yeah.
so share with me.
Well, Robert Carter is the guy that lied on me. And because he lied, I was now 10 years in prison, still facing death. And at this time, Robert Carter had been reaching out to any and everyone that he knew, including my attorneys, his attorneys, the victim's family, trying to tell them that he had lied on an innocent man, which was me. So, but this time, they put us in the same rec group together. And when we go out to rec, he's already out to the rec group. And when they bring me out there, he sees me and he wants to come up and say something to me. So he approached me and he said, "Hey man, I just want to let you know that I'm sorry. I apologize for hurting you and your family like this." He said, "I told them that you were innocent, but they never wanted to believe me." He said, the DA always knew you was innocent, but he told me that's not what he wanted to hear. And I just want you to know, man, that I really apologize. And I said to him, "Hey man, I can forgive you, right? I can't forget this, but I can definitely forgive you. Right? But I have to forgive you for me, right? I was forgiving him for me because I couldn't hold on to that and try to live, okay? So I needed to let that go, give that to God. And I told him I forgave him, right? And people wanted to know, how could you just forgive him like that? I mean, you watch your mom cry all these years behind a lie that this man told. You watch your children have to grow up without you behind a lie that this man told. His man has taken your own life, and you witnessing murders around here because of the lie that this man had told. And now you're forgiving him. How can you do that?" And I said, "It's called the love of God, man. Simply put, you cannot say you love God and then hate the people that he created. It doesn't make sense to me. So it was easy for me to forgive a man that put my life in a position where someone was going to execute me for something I didn't know anything about, because I was refusing to allow him to take what God has given me away from me, which was my peace, which was love of humanity, which was my respect and dignity of all people. I was refusing to give that up just so I could be angry. So I forgave. I forgave, and I stayed in this forgiving place, and it gave me peace. It gave me calm. It allowed me to think, because you can't think when you're angry. So it allowed me to think. It allowed me to reach out to people and ask people around the world to help me save my life. I started a whole organization behind walls because I was in that space where I could think. And so I would reach out to people and I would share my story, and people would come on board from all the way from Switzerland and Sweden and Norway and Germany and Italy, all over the world. And I never been to those places. I was behind bars and I was reaching out to people all over the world, and people was learning my story and getting involved. That was all God. That was because I stayed true to who I was. I was a child of God, and I was not going to let man turn me against the one person, the one source that have always given me strength and comfort. And so it was easy for me to forgive this man that lied on me, because I knew that God basically said, in order to live, you must forgive. And so I wanted to live. And that's why I'm able to live today.
Oh, it brings a quote to mind. I may be misquoting it, but I remember writing it once, and it was, to hang on to anger and regret and revenge is like taking poison and waiting on the other person to die.
Yes.
Because
that's
it
exactly
poisons
what it is.
our soul and
Yes,
ourselves
ma'am.
and does not. And to understand that, as you mentioned, this gentleman was created by God as well, and things happen in the system and unjust things and the whole bit. So to be able to forgive so that you could live, I think that's a great reminder for everyone. As you mentioned, connecting with people around the world, human connection, where in this day and age, I believe even we've gotten so far away from it, even if just at home, I mean, there's TV and there's the computer and there's the cell phone, and we're not connecting with our own families, let alone our neighbors and our coworkers or complete strangers.
Right.
I always get teased, and I'm so happy to be in Texas because everybody says hello and opens doors and say have a blessed day. And I'm like, yes, the land of my people. It's something I've always loved. But as I shared with you earlier, I used to get teased as a kid. You're too friendly. You're too outgoing. It's going to get you in trouble. And that's what made me move to Texas in my teens, because I was like, oh, it's a land of my people. And even where my office is located in downtown Ventura, California, I'm up and down the streets all day and I say hello to people, and some say hello and some don't. But it doesn't change me.
Right.
I still give a smile and a hello because that's how I was made. So that
Right.
human connection is so important. And in your book, you share how people from all over the world, just through letters and that connecting back and forth, some even came across the world to visit with you. So share with the listeners, of course, how important that connection was to you while you obviously were in prison. That's so important. But then also expand that when we're out of prison in our daily life, it's so important to remember that
Let me
connection.
just say this. While we out here, we find ourselves hugging, shaking hands with people that we love and care about. And we find out that it's so easy to do that we take it for granted, right? If I don't shake your hand now, I can shake your hand tomorrow when I see you. I learned that you can't think that way. I always thought that, if it was one thing that I could have done before they took me away like this, what would it have been? It would have been to hug my mother one more time. Because for 18 and a half years, I wasn't able to hug my mother, wasn't able to hug my children, wasn't able to hug anyone that cared about me for 18 and a half years. And going through that, I learned something. I learned how we are built for human touch. I learned that taking away someone's ability to touch another human being is just like having a car with no gas in it. We are built for human touch. And just the mere fact that it was 6,640 days that I never touched another human being unless they was putting handcuffs on my hands was probably the hardest thing that I had to endure. Was just the absence of the human touch. We don't know how powerful that is until it's taken from us. We are built for each other. Handshakes are universal for a reason. No one created it. It's just who we are. Not having the opportunity to touch your loved one, to hug your loved one, to watch your children grow. It's more devastating the injustice that you're suffering at the hands of the system. So the human touch is so important. I would just want someone to touch my hand when they came to put handcuffs on me. Because it's just you feel another human being. Just imagine just walking around in the world all day and you never able to touch anyone. Just imagine how that would feel when you get excited about something that your child did, but you can't hug him for it. You can't hug your mom because something that just happened big in your life and you want to share it with them and everybody excited. Just imagine those feelings being removed from your life. It is the hardest thing man can ever deal with, the absence of human touch. So I'll say to each and every one of your listeners that are out there today, if you have not hugged your mother, if you have not hugged your children today, when you see them, please do. Because you do not know what's happening tomorrow. Whatever plans you have, God has other plans for you. So when you get an opportunity to hug your mother and your children, do it. What I do now every day when I talk to my mom, the one thing I tell her before we hang up, I love you. I tell her so much now that she says it back, and they're not used to that.
Are you still asking her what's for dinner?
I'm always asking what's for dinner.
What's for
on
dinner?
my
I
way
love
down
you.
there. Yeah, and I love her because that's so
Yes.
important. It is
Yes.
so important that we stay connected that way.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Oh, what a great reminder for everyone. The topic of being humble. When you received word, you were listening to a baseball game, right?
Yes. March the 3rd, 2006. I had been in prison over 14 years already on death row. I had 2 execution dates already. I was laying in my bunk listening to the Astros play baseball. And this female officer came through and she throws this note in my cell. And I asked her, I say, what is this? She said, well, I think this is from another inmate. He said something about your case. Now, understanding on death row, when you get information, you're not so quick to jump up and go see what it is, because it could be an execution date. It could be anything, right? But anyway, I got up and I wanted to go and see what the note was talking about. And the note said, hey, man, congratulations. I just heard on the radio that the Fifth Circuit just overturned your conviction. I'll see you out there in the free world. And when I read this, you got to understand, I've been here over 14 years waiting on this news. And I got it, and I just felt so overwhelmed. I just wanted to scream and shout. And then I realized everybody around me has a death sentence. And they're probably going to get executed. Most of them are guilty. Some of them are innocent. Many of them are dealing with mental illness. But they're going to all be executed. And I just got this news, and I don't feel comfortable screaming and shouting about it. So what I did is I walked back to my bunk and I laid down and I silently cried and pumped my fists and thanked God. But it was because I just didn't feel right sharing good news with people who were facing execution dates. I just felt like, who am I to get out there and shout for joy when so many around me are still in pain? So I just humbly went to my bunk and I thanked God and I cried and I prayed for everybody. And I'm here today. So
I love that. And as we were talking earlier, you mentioned, in our daily world, to be humble and mindful of others.
yes.
And to remember that, because we get so wrapped up in ourselves.
Yes.
Ego takes over. Oh gosh, I don't remember who said it, but ego, is edging God out.
Well, I believe that. I definitely
And
believe that.
sometimes we can forget to be mindful of those around us and what they're going through. So being humble and kind and
Yeah, and that's a characteristic trait, right? That's just say who you are as a human being. When you can be mindful of others while you are on your highs or on your lows. Just being mindful that, number one, when you're on your lows, that it could be much worse, right? And when you're on your highs, is that you give God the glory. But don't get too high when your highs are high. Don't get too low when your lows are low. Just stay humble. Keep it even keel. Know that God is good. Know that God got your back. But also know that God expects you to basically carry yourself in a godlike way. And if we can do that, we can make the world a better place. We can start right there, making the world a better place by developing better relationships with those that we love and those that are around us that look like us. So I would say those are the things that I learned from sitting in solitary confinement and looking at the world through a glass stained window. I learned that we can do better, and we must do better, and it's up to us to do that.
And you are doing better.
And we
You
are doing better.
Yes, we are doing better. And we have an opportunity every day to do better. I mean, you went through unbelievableness that no one, again, I can't even fathom, but you did, and you came out better, and you're helping others.
Yeah.
For the listeners, no matter what your struggle, how little you may feel it is still your struggle.
Yes.
And to look at it and choose to find the good in it and to help others fills you more than it fills others. It comes right back around. So share a little bit about your foundation and the good that you're doing so the listeners can know where to go and find you and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I started a foundation, and right now it's called Anthony Graves Foundation, but we're changing the name to brassfacts.org. And this foundation
Brass, BRASS?
yes,
Okay.
brassfacts, .org. In the next 2 months, we'll have that changed over. But for right now, it's still Anthony Graves Foundation.org. And the foundation was created to help people get out of prison who shouldn't be there. Basically, that's the nutshell. And we try to remove the criteria that other organizations have for taking up such cases. For example, whether you have DNA or not, if you're innocent, we'll fight for you. Okay? So I wanted to build a nonprofit that I felt that would serve all of those who have been wronged by the criminal justice system. When I was back there, I reached out to many nonprofits asking for their assistance, but they always had criteria. Do you have DNA, etc., etc.? I didn't have DNA in my case. A lot of these institutions wouldn't help me. I would have been dead based on their criteria. So I wanted to come out and start a nonprofit that didn't deal with those criteria. The only criteria we deal with, have you been wrongfully convicted? And if you've been wrongfully convicted, we want to help you, right? So that's why I started that foundation. But then I also learned that in order to really enhance this work, people need to know these stories. So I also started a speakers bureau with people who've been directly impacted by the criminal justice system. And what I did is created a 12-week curriculum on training them how to tell their story. And tell their story in different settings, in front of legislative body, in front of media, in front of legal entities, non-legal entities, churches. Those stories need to be told. Everybody gets out and tells stories for other people who have been wronged by the system. And that's okay. This is all of our system. But the stories need to be heard by those who've been directly impacted. And so what I wanted to do, because I see how people are responding to me, I feel like if I could create a program where people tell these stories, we can magnify this. And so it has been a positive thing. We have gotten our first graduate class. And just last week, they were speaking to state reps up at the Texas legislature, what it has done for them. And they'll tell you it has empowered them. It has given their life back. It has given them a voice out here where they never thought they could be heard. And it has given them a reason to get up and fight every day. It's an amazing program. And these were things that I just felt like I wish would have been in place for me. And so I created the things that I felt like if they'd have been in place for me, I could have gotten help.
Well, and that ties right into you are somebody. Oftentimes people go, I wish somebody would this or I wish somebody would that. And one of the things we like to share with the listeners is you are somebody.
Yes.
You can make a difference.
Yes.
And no matter how small you may feel, oftentimes we feel, well, I'm just one. I'm not significant. The power of accumulation and that power of that positive forward motion, taking that one little step at a time and to help others and to help them have their voice. Again, for the listeners, Anthony, you were one day just enjoying your family and your girlfriend and your brother and your home and the whole bit, to the next day being brought down for questioning, handcuffed, and boom, 18 years of your life just gone. For anyone out there listening, you may think, well, that could never happen to me. Well, I'm sure before this happened to you,
I would think the same thing.
Right.
Never happened to me. I'm not a criminal. I don't just harm anyone. Why would someone accuse me of something that, like, of this magnitude, And so I never thought it would happen to me, and then it knocked on my door.
Right.
It knocked on my door and changed my whole life. I went from a 26-year-old kid to prison and come out a 45-year-old man with a purpose that is greater than myself now. And so this is when you talk about positive thinking and moving forward positively. Listen, at 26, when they took my freedom and talk about taking my life, I could have given up. But I said, this is not the end. This can't be the way God wants my life to end. It has to be more to it. So I started questioning things. And then it started making sense to me. I'm being prepared for something bigger. So I need to be prepared. And that's how I went about my life. I wrote letters, I wrote my book. I just needed to stay positive because I knew it was something bigger waiting around the corner. I just had to be patient enough to wait for it. And now I'm here. So
And again, an honor to be here with you today. And thank you so much for sharing your story and doing so much good for others. Keep up the positive forward motion. I have no doubt that you will.
That's the way I live. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, what a great reminder of how our choices in our life can make all the difference in the world, not only to us, but also to others. I want to thank you so much for listening in today, and I'd love to hear your feedback. So why don't you email me, denise@denisescattergood.com, and share with me maybe what you took away from this episode. And also remember to please rate, review, and share this podcast. I appreciate you listening in. I hope you're finding value. I'm wishing you continued success and happiness. And remember to keep up the positive forward motion.